Okay, colleagues, my apologies for running late. If we can quickly go around the room, I'm Gerald Van Jackson, I'm Leader of the Council and I chair this meeting of the Cabinet. Kimberly.
I'm Kimberly Barrett, I'm Cabinet Member for Climate Change and the Environment.
I'm Darren Sanders, I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Councillor Steve Pitt, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Councillor Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Councillor Jason Fazackerley, Cabinet Member for Safety in the Community.
I'm the Cabinet Member Lee Hunt. I'm responsible for planning policy and city development.
Councillor Lynn Stagg, Traffic and Transportation Cabinet Member.
Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services.
Matthew Williamson, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance.
Jane Dodino, Democratic Services Officer.
Dominique Latouze, Assistant Director of Public Health.
Colette Hill, Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods.
Dave Emmett, Head of Waste Services.
James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Natasha Edmonds, Director of Corporate Services.
Martin, do you want to go next?
Martin Labour, Assistant Director for Infrastructure.
Hello, Peter Shelley, Transport Development Manager.
Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Anne Keynes, Head of Acquisitions and Disposals. Helen Dickerson, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Josh? The voice of truth. Okay, folks, thanks very much indeed. Anything interesting? Fire alarm, if it goes, it's real. Meet with Queen Victoria. I don't think there are any. I've got a late request for a deputation from Martin Northern, who I hope will be with us in a few minutes, who wants to come talk at Anne's report about Debenhams. Okay, let's quickly see if we can run through this very small agenda. So, any declarations of interest? Anybody have? No. Okay, supersized pilot sponsored by McDonald's. No. Superzone pilot not sponsored by McDonald's. Welcome.
Thank you, Gerald. Yeah, the Superzone pilot, based in Charles Dickens at Arundel Court School, definitely not sponsored by McDonald's. I'll assume you've read the report. As you know, the Superzone is a place-based approach to improving urban environments. It's based around 400 metres radius around a single point. In this case, as I said, Arundel Court Primary School. In Charles Dickens ward, bringing together policy and practice and community action to improve health and well-being around that area. There's no additional funding attached to this. We're coordinating existing plans. So it's originally established to tackle the drivers of childhood obesity. First piloted in London, so there's around 50 Superzone pilots in London. We in Portsmouth asked children what made them healthy and unhealthy in their local area, and their answers informed 4 work streams of the programme. We've got healthy eating, physical activity, clean air, and community safety. We originally started, we planned to launch the Superzone in March 2020, but obviously we all went into lockdown. And then subsequent to that, there were ongoing COVID outbreaks at the school. So we really started properly this year, this academic year. And that sort of forced us to really rethink our approach. And so rather than tackling everything all at once with the 4 work streams, we've taken one of the 4 themes at one time. And so we've established a number of sort of quick wins, including the daily mile, whereby children run or walk or jog for 1 mile around the school grounds every day, and that's been instituted right from the get-go and has been really effective and is still running. A number of different things around community safety, including the Arundel Park redesign. Children expressed concern that they didn't feel safe in the park to play, so it's obviously has a big impact on their health in terms of them achieving lots of physical activity, and so we worked across the council to redesign the park to make them better natural surveillance in terms of removing some bushes and making it, putting some dog mess bins in there. That was another thing that children didn't like, and also landscaping and planting trees. That's been quite effective. We need to go back to the children to assess whether that's acceptable for them. In terms of what's next, we're looking at the clean air work stream next. There's a school streets programme planned for later this month. We've got funding for greening and edible planting at the school. And we're doing some school engagement with anti-idling. So you can see those are initiatives across the council and a number of different directorates that are being coordinated around that. In terms of healthy eating, we're looking at increasing free school meal uptake. There's a large proportion of the children across the school, not just in Key Stage 1, are eligible for free school meals. So we'd like to increase that as a way of children getting a healthy, nutritious meal at lunchtime. In terms of findings, really, we're conducting a detailed evaluation at the moment, measuring outputs, but also really trying to understand what has worked in this school and why. And we've really found through that evaluation that one of the key factors was around engagement with the school. So that meaningful engagement with teachers and with parents and school pupils seems to benefit from a much slower pace. We've been able to work alongside the rhythms of the school by using homeworks to get survey responses, but also to build trust with school members and using the school as a sort of trusted broker, if you like. The council really isn't that involved directly. We really go through the school. So that's worked really well, and we've done that really slowly. The other thing that helps is that we're able to sort of iterate our approach, by which I mean we can test things, and if they work, then we'll continue them. If they don't work, we change our approach. And that's been really useful. And that's also helped us to work across the school, not across also, as I say, PCC departments, but other agencies like housing associations, food banks, food larders, to undertake those sort of small tests of change that are sometimes successful, sometimes don't. And then when they don't work, crucially being able to go back and understand why they didn't work. Because it's taken quite a while to get into our stride, and we've got further interventions planned, as I say, for later this term and the next term, the school are happy to extend the pilot for a further year. And then we'll need to start considering sort of sustainability of the programme during that time.
Okay, thanks. Matthew?
Thank you, and thank you, Dom, for coming to give us the overview of the pilot. As she mentioned, this has been a long-term thing, and obviously was planned to come in just at the point where the pandemic started, and so therefore has been delayed. But I think it's been, so myself and Councillor Stagg went to a launch event, went to a feedback event pre-pandemic, so about 2019 it was, where we went to listen to the children, and it was Councillor Ashmore as well, wasn't it? Yeah, so we went to listen to the children's initial feedback. This has been very much co-produced with the children about what the things were that were coming up. So from that very beginning, I think that's a really important thing to do. This hasn't just been something imposed. This has been very much co-produced with school children, their families, and also the staff at the school as well. So all of these interventions we're doing are all based on that feedback there. What we've done so far has been really positive. I think something to sort of draw out of this as well in terms of the area this covers. It also covers the area includes St Edmund's School, St John's Catholic Primary, and abuts Art Dickens, and Portsmouth, whatever it's called. What used to be City Girls, I can't remember what it's called. Portsmouth Academy. And so this entire area really has that impact not just on Arundel Courts, but also more schools as well, and the children who go there. Having said that, Arundel Court have been absolutely fantastic working with us on this, and as I say, it's very much that co-production. It's in one of our most deprived areas of the city. Excuse me, it's in one of the most deprived areas of the city, and it's really been a tribute, as what's been related by Dom so far, working right across the council, including our environmental services, culture and leisure, and of course housing. And I would draw attention to 3.3.4, which is about the active skills model, which is something that is going to be, we'll be hearing more about that as very soon as Cabinet, and that is going to go in the courts. I think Councillor Sanders is going to sort of touch on that a bit as well, which is something we're doing together with housing alongside public health. So it really is a cross portfolio bit of work here. It's a cross community bit of work, but the most important thing, it's co-produced, and from what we're getting so far, as Dom says, is being evaluated, but it is something that I think we could really look to move forward to elsewhere in the city. And I know we're in with a network of the super zones in London, where there are quite a number of them, and I think this would be an aspiration for us to do this right across the city. So thanks so much, and I'm really pleased to have the report presented to Cabinet.
Thanks. Susie.
3 quick things. First of all, thank you for the report. It's really good to get going after the delay with COVID. Second thing is just to highlight, I know it's been mentioned a couple of times, but the importance of cross-directorate initiatives and also cross-portfolio working. For example, the School Street stuff, although they're not doing School Street in the same way, a lot of the learning was transferred across. And thirdly, a big shout out to probably the most undervalued marketing resource, which is children. So Pester Power should be a part of every single campaign we can do, if it is relevant, of course. But there is nothing that is going to change the city and the future than the power of annoying children telling their parents how they should change their behaviour.
I didn't know there were such things. Lynn.
Yes, following on from what Matt was saying about our visit to Arundel Court, I just want to say how impressive the kids were. These are from year 1 to year 5, 6, and they, 2 at a time, a boy and a girl, gave a presentation. They were totally committed, they were clear, they were dedicated, and the staff were behind them. So it's really sort of ripe ground for this to happen. It was brilliant. So well done to all of them. And obviously to the officers here for working with them. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, folks. Colleagues. Oh, sorry, Steve? No. Darren, sorry, beg your pardon.
Hello. I was hiding my light under a bushel for a change.
Okay, well...
Thanks. Just to support everything, also to say that this is obviously one of the units, one of the places that we use for the Holiday Activities Fund, which I know is incredibly popular down there as well. And also they've got plots in the Lamport Community Garden, which is next door, which I know goes down very, very well. I was particularly interested in the fact that so many car journeys were made initially in such a relatively deprived area, and I'd be very interested to see how that works in the long run, because we do want to try and make sure that our kids don't die of air pollution, which means reducing car journeys. Matt is right, there are more things to come. The idea is to improve part of what's known as the courts, which for people who don't know is the blocks the other side of the road, and the active skills model has worked out very, very well in Holland, in Belgium and in other countries, and I'd be delighted to be, I'm hopeful that Portsmouth will be amongst the first in the country to adopt it, because I think that will continue this model. And the idea is, as Lynn and Susie have said, is if you involve children and give people control over their own futures, strangely things get better. And I think that's one of the things we can all learn as a council. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you. 2 quick things. My phone has gone, so at 3:15, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave. I'm sure we would have finished No, 13:15, sorry. I'm sure we will have finished by then because people will have curtailed the number of speaking occasions they wish to use. So I may not call people if they keep wanting to speak lots. But also we have a late deputation request from Martin Northern over the compulsory purchase order report about Debenhams, which I'm going to do because, like me, Martin has a life to go to and needs to get to a work appointment. So can I suggest we change the order of business and that we move to item 13, which is the exclusion of press and public, but this is indeed only for, in terms of an exempt appendix, is that right?
That's correct.
Yep. So if we are we happy to do that, but we'll keep the debate in public as long as people don't refer to things within that exempt appendix. So colleagues, are you happy with that? Thank you. So, Anne, do you want to introduce the report and then we'll come to deputations?
Yes, thank you. And the purpose of this report is to request the Cabinet's approval to, in principle...
You'll need to be a bit louder. I'm old and deaf. He says not speaking into his microphone.
Apologies. Okay, is that better? Yes. Okay, the purpose of this report is to seek the Cabinet's approval to start the process to acquire the former Debenhams building by compulsory purchase in the event that our current negotiations fail.
Great. Do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think that's all really.
That's great. Okay.
May I... can I get some legal advice? I beg your pardon.
Yep.
Is there a legal person
Yes,
here?
there is. Just here, Deputy Managing Officer.
Beg your pardon. So in my role, it is planning policy and development, city development. Should I not be here on this particular item or not?
There's two stages to that. The first is that actually, as I understand it, the recommendations that are being considered today have been slightly altered from the report itself because there was a distinction between those that are Cabinet decisions and actually it was recommending that the Cabinet approves some recommendations to go to full council. And so in those circumstances, if that's the recommendations that you're putting forward to put it forward to full council, you should be fine.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. I just thought I'd better make sure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Northern, welcome. The floor is yours for 6 minutes or less. Push the button and you will be live.
Hello. As a resident of Southsea, I find that the area of where Debenhams is, obviously at the moment, since it's been closed for so long, it just has become such a dark and dirty part of the city. I think it's super important that we as a council own the building so that we can start to clean that part of the city up. I think that the local residents as well sort of seem to give us lots of indications that they'd like it to be nice and clean. And I think without somebody looking after the building, it just starts to make it look really horrific. I think with the Knight and Lee building also being worked on at the moment, I think it would just massively transform that whole part of the city. I think it will start to really make a difference to people's lives when we start to put things like doctor surgeries, dentists and things like that into that building. I think it will really make a massive difference. And I don't really know what else to say. I think it's just so important that part of the city is changed, really.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Northern. I completely agree with Mr. Northern. I think this is an area where it's really important that the City Council takes action. So this building has got planning permission to be converted. We know the doctor surgery at Ashburton want to move in and there is funding from the NHS to do so. So everything is there for this area to be redeveloped to bring active shopping and use on the ground floor, and then flats above and parking in the basement where there used to be parking. and yet the owner has sat on this building and has the financial resources to continue to sit on this building and leave it empty for 20 years, and this is where I think the council has to take action. So it seems to me there are three options. Either the owner gets on and gets the redevelopment done, they've got planning permission, it's their building, or they sell it to somebody who will get the redevelopment done and get it as an active building, or if neither of those things happen, then we have to move to compulsory purchase. We've done, this is the first time we've ever done it with a very big building, but I think what leaving Debenhams empty for 20 years would do to Southsea is so terrible that we cannot sit by and we have to take action. Let's be clear, the City Council got within one signature of buying this building 2 years ago, and only one signature wasn't given, and that's what stopped it happening. This place would be redeveloped by now, if that had happened, but I have lost patience, and I think we have to get on and do this, so I'm happy to recommend this. Councillor Lee Hunt.
Well, for once I'm glad that you have lost patience. But I too feel that this sends out a signal from the City Council, because residents across the city are frustrated that when they see that the council is obligated by the government to build, the target is around about 17,000 homes. It may be less, depending on how the city local plan works out. But they quite rightly ask about the question of redundant buildings all over the city, which already do have planning permission. So I can think of a number like that. There's one in Fratton Road that used to be the former shoe shop. That was a housing association application, which has never been built out, I think for something around about 100 homes. So residents quite rightly say, what's going on? You know, we've got to build all these homes, but there's all these redundant sites everywhere. I understand too that the government is looking at bringing forward some sort of power or compunction for developers to build once they've got their planning permission. We'll have to see how that goes. But if we as a local authority can send a signal to developers that we will compulsory purchase buildings, I know that they are all different. So for example, for nearly 3 years, I've been talking about quick save in North End, but I also know that officers from Tristan's area have been over to Southampton where the guy lives, the developer lives. They've doorstepped him. They've done as much as they possibly can to push the developer along on that. But to the average Joe outside, or the average Joess outside, it looks like we're not getting on with things. So I very much welcome the signal that hopefully the council will want to send to developers that once they get their planning permission, it's a very good idea to get on with it. Otherwise they may well face a compulsory purchase order. And I know it's not straightforward. I know that sometimes the courts will get involved, and for example, up at the quick save one, a pre-planning advice request was made, and if we had decided to CPO that, it would have frustrated it. So I very much welcome this. I hope very much that we will get on with it, and I hope that we will see more homes built, and the questions that people ask about these redundant buildings answered to a certain extent. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I think we have an intervention from our lawyer.
I just wanted to double check, Leader, that there was a suggested amended resolution with regard to that, and I wanted to make sure that everybody
Okay, could you read it out for us?
That Cabinet recommends that full council approves the strategy to assemble the land required for the development of the former Debenhams site in Palmerston Road, in line with the approved planning application for the site, that it delegates its authority to the Director of Regeneration and the Section 151 officer on the advice of the City Solicitor in consultation with the Leader to negotiate and complete acquisitions of legal interests subject to affordability, based on the statutory compulsory purchase order, compensation code, in land required for the delivery of the former Debenhams planning consent, procure and appoint specialist advisors as required for land references, agents and specialist compulsory purchase surveyors, approve the progress of all work necessary to establish a case for compulsory purchase, approve in principle the use of compulsory purchase powers for the acquisition of land to deliver the former Debenhams Palmerston Road regeneration scheme. Notes the red line area shown in the plan and resolves that Cabinet notes that officers may need to seek a future resolution to grant the Director of Regeneration the City Solicitor authority in accordance with Section 122 of the Local Government Act. Carries on a little bit, but that's the essential.
Okay.
I don't doubt, Leader, that the Council will want to back us.
I'm sure they will. Mr. Pitt.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to reiterate really some of the comments made so far, but to stress that in this particular case, there is planning consent, there is a business case around developing the building that makes sense. There is an opportunity to bring the ground floor into a very productive community use. All of those things stack up here, and that's what's so important and why it should be brought forward as a site. There are lots of complex reasons why sites are not brought forward, and each one of them has to be looked at as an individual business case. But there is a very clear business case on this, or otherwise they would never have presented their planning application with an economic viability assessment in the first place. So we know that. That's already been played out in the public domain. There is therefore no reason why this site should not be developed out. So we need to get on with it. We need to keep the pressure up on the owners to make sure that they, as you quite rightly identified, move forward one of those solutions as fast as possible. What we cannot as a council tolerate is people just sitting there land banking for years on end with no clear plan as to what's to happen on key strategic locations in our communities. Our residents are always asking us why we don't flatten Commercial Road and bring forward a new development. Well, there's a really good reason for that. We don't own any of it. And when we've tried to buy bits of it, we've been stymied by other people who've stepped in and paid what we regard as a high price for those sites. So there clearly is land value in Portsmouth in those key strategic locations, Commercial Road not least of them. But we want to see that those sites are able to be regenerated. This sends a clear message in that if there is a strong economic case to redevelop a location and somebody is sitting on it just for the sake of it, that the council can no longer tolerate that, and that we must regenerate our urban centres. We need to use the land that we've got available to us, as Councillor Hunt said, in a productive way. How can the residents of Portsmouth be expected to support the government imposing thousands of new homes on the city when there is clearly the ability to bring forward thousands of new homes on sites that are not being developed because people are sitting on them for many years waiting for land values to go up or until they can actually be bothered to execute an extant consent? We can't put up with that anymore. We've got to do something about it, and I believe this sends a message not just on this location but that the council is ready and willing to work in partnership with site owners to bring forward those developments wherever they can. What we won't tolerate is people who've purchased sites, got planning permissions, sitting on them forever and doing nothing.
Okay, colleagues, are you happy with the recommendations as read out by our solicitor? Colleagues, are you happy with that? Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Northern, thank you very much for coming. You may disappear if you so wish. The rest of us are not given such a light life. Okay, going back to the order we were in. Peter, bus service improvement plan. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet. The Cabinet requested an update on the bus service improvement plan for Portsmouth. A little bit of history. In March 2021, Government announced a new national bus strategy which required local transport authorities such as Portsmouth City Council to publish a bus service improvement plan and form an enhanced partnership with local bus operators. Cabinet has contributed to and approved this process since June 2021, and in April last year, Portsmouth was advised of indicative funding of £48.3 million, one of the highest allocations in the country. Cabinet approved an updated enhanced partnership and scheme in June 2022, and that funding, £48.3 million, was agreed by the Department for Transport in August 2022. The first year payment of £7 million was paid to the Council in January 2023. part of this, a range of initiatives started from December 2022, informed by work with Cabinet and the initial consultation with 1,100 residents. These included early morning buses on key routes from 4:30 a.m. to make it easier to get to work, and late night buses on Friday and Saturday through to 1:30 a.m. to support the nighttime economy. In January, some 2,400 trips were made on these extra journeys. Buses also ran on Christmas Day 2022 for the first time in several years, so that family and friends could keep in touch. Over 1,500 journeys were made on that day. The approach taken has been all these services run their full normal route through to Porchester and Fareham, to Havant, Lee Park, to Waterlooville and Horndean, recognising the strong links between the city and these areas, and that journeys do not take account of administrative boundaries. In the latest initiative, the 4 Sundays of March are free fare Sundays, with all bus journeys within the city on those days free of charge. And work is ongoing with operators to introduce other fares initiatives, such as the discount for under-19s. The zero-emission bus programme is also part of the National Bus Strategy, and Portsmouth led a bid with Hampshire County Council and for First Bus for 34 electric buses for routes 1, 3, 9 and 9A. The bid was successful and £6.6 million was awarded last April. Portsmouth and partners were then invited to submit a further bid, which we did just before Christmas, for 28 more electric buses for the X4, X5 and Eclipse services. Government announced the success of this bid last week, and £6.2 million was paid into the city account last week. This means that the Portsmouth City region will have 62 zero-emission electric buses due in service by March 2024, the largest deployment on the south coast, with a value including operator match funding of almost 28 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lindstag. Welcome back. It's very nice to see you.
Thank you. One of the reasons for supporting the BSIP and wanting the money for it is to try and encourage more people to use public transport as one of the options to using a car. We have a major air quality problem in Portsmouth. We have, I think it's something like 41,000 vehicles per day coming into the city. All of those are contributing to our air pollution. So we want to encourage more people to use buses, but we want to make those journeys better for the people using them. Otherwise, people won't use the buses. So by bringing in the early morning services, those people who shift work, I mean, I was talking to some people who are cleaners up at Queen Alexandra Hospital, absolutely delighted with it because they could actually get the bus early. They start work at 6 o'clock and that was fine. So that sorted their day. They were from 6 until 10. So that sort of thing. The nighttime economy, as Peter has already said. The Free Sunday it's actually to attract people who've not used buses at all recently. I know one of my colleagues, who is here in the chamber actually, admitted that she had not used a bus for over 30 years and didn't know how to use a modern bus, because obviously it's a different way of from the old ticket collector. So it's to give those people the opportunity to use buses and see that they are much better than people do sort of imagine them to be. And as I say to lots of people, it costs as much to run a bus with one passenger as it does with 53. Now, if you can get somewhere over 1 and up to 53, that means the income for the bus companies is much greater, and that eventually should lead to lower fares. And that's one thing that we want to have as well for people. That's an attraction for people to use the buses more. So I'm delighted with what we've done so far. There's still loads to go, but that's all in the pipeline anyway. And I want to thank Peter for all the work he's done on that.
Yeah, can I echo my thanks to Peter as well and everybody involved. The idea that we're within striking distance of getting to an all-electric fleet for buses in the city is incredibly good. Colleagues, anybody else? Colette, do you want to talk, or we're just scratching an ear? Okay. Okay.
I mean, if I made it, it's really, I know we want to get on, and they all look at me, but this is such good news. But there's so much good news that comes out of this council.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees or the buses for the trucks. I don't know, but this is astonishing. This is astonishing. All the buses in Pompey are going to be electric, and they're going to be green, and they can be free from smog. But then when we see the ship to shore power, the achievements that's going on here, thanks to our officers, all of them working together, and councillors, is tremendous. And sometimes we don't shout out about it enough. I try to, but like I say, I get lost in the wood.
Excellent. Well, we're coming back to that later. Thanks, Lee. Colleagues, you happy with this report and the recommendations? Thank you much indeed. Okay, we're going to be talking rubbish next. Dave, are you talking rubbish or is it Colette? Yes. Item 5 on the agenda. Who is leading? Okay, shall we accept, colleagues, are you happy to accept the report? Thank you, okay, thanks. All right. Next one, Household Waste Recycling Centre Booking System.
Yes.
Dave, welcome, thank you.
Thank you. The purpose of the report is to update Cabinet on the results of the Household Waste Recycling Centre Booking System Portsolent Residents Survey, as requested by full council on the 6th of December 22. Just to give you some brief background, a report, the permanent retention of the Household Waste Recycling Centre booking system was taken to and approved at the Community Safety and Environment Portfolio meeting on the 9th of March 22. As part of this report, a satisfaction survey was undertaken by Hampshire County Council with all customers across the 26 sites in the network. Of this 919 were responses from Portsmouth HWLC users. 92% of those respondents were either satisfied or very satisfied with the booking system experience, and 82.4% of respondents supported continued use of a booking system in the future. As requested by full council, an online survey was launched on Thursday the 19th of January and closed on Sunday the 12th of February and targeted approximately 700 households and businesses of Portsolent. In total, we had 195 respondents who interacted with that survey. Overall, the summary results was the vast majority of respondents find the booking systems easy to use, while just 5% find it difficult to use, and a majority of respondents agreed that the current booking system should remain in place, 60% with 49% strongly agreeing and 11% slightly agreeing. So this survey reinforces and supports for the retaining of the booking system as shown by the survey results from the previous report. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, and thanks for the helpful report and the survey. Do we need to send this back to full council because that's where the request originally came from?
I don't think so. It said just to report to Cabinet.
Okay. Colleagues, you happy to accept this as Kimberly?
Sorry, I just wanted to firstly thank the officers for doing this report. As you, might have seen, anyone who's read the anaerobic digester report, the officers, they're a very small team and they've had to deal with doing this as well as doing the food waste rollout, continuing that, normal day-to-day household waste issues, and a couple of other things going on as well, and they've done this really quickly on a limited time scale, so thank you for doing all that and getting this report to us. I also thought it was very important to say thank you very much to the residents of the city as well, and I will refer to Josh's newspaper article that was online. I know as a councillor and perhaps some of the council officers in the room, sometimes there's a little bit of trepidation when you go on to Facebook and look at some of the comments that are on the news articles, but thank you so much, Josh. I have never had so much positive support from residents on this. Just over 300, I think it was something like 360 comments on there, something like that. 330 of them were in support of the booking system, which I think it just goes to show how popular it is. People don't like to queue. It means they've got hours of their lives back, because I know when I used to go up with my dad up the tip, sometimes you queue for hours, and we've just been speaking about air quality issues. This means that we haven't got people queuing for hours upon hours at the booking system, especially down at Port Solent as well, where people are trying to go to the cinema, up to Port Solent to have a nice meal with their family, and they're not getting stuck or having to cancel those things as well. So I just want to thank everyone who's been involved, because I've had multiple phone calls from people in Port Solent and across the city as well about this, but also my counterparts across Hampshire, when I was at a Project Integra meeting, came to me after the meeting and asked why we were even considering, or why the question was raised about the booking system. So I've told them to go speak to their own particular parties to ask why that was raised, but thank you for their support as well, because they also acknowledge how good the booking system is. So it's a really good thing. I'm pleased to say that obviously this report shows that people are still supportive of it in Port Solent. As Dave mentioned, 3.1.5 of the report shows how satisfied people were with it. So long may it continue. My thanks to my colleague Councillor Ashmore, because he was in charge of this and made this decision last year as well, and he also acknowledges how popular it was at the time. So thank you very much to the officers, thank you to the residents for supporting this, and we will continue on.
Great. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Leader. It will come as no surprise that I'm going to be slightly less polite than Councillor Barrett's been about why we're actually sat here reading this report. That everyone at full council thought this was a great opportunity to throw rocks at the administration and say that we'd done the wrong thing and we weren't listening to residents, when it was absolutely clear at that point that the previous report that had been brought to Councillor Ashmore's portfolio made it abundantly clear that this was properly supported and was having the right outcomes. So we're here today because opposition members at a full council meeting decided this was a great thing to throw pot shots at the council. None of them are here. I'm hoping that I'm going to be wrong in my assumption that none of them have also bothered to apologise to the officers for the enormous waste of time that this has created. The officers are under an enormous amount of strain. I don't think anybody truly appreciates just how difficult things are across certain parts of the council at the moment, and the ongoing impact that COVID is having and illness is having on those cohorts, and also that some departments have been really struggling to recruit, which is not just a Portsmouth issue but a national one. So when people have, despite the proper advice that they received at the time, knowingly wasted officers' time, I hope that at least in the privacy of their own emails they have the good grace to apologise.
Which is why I am slightly bemused why this is not going back to full council. We were asked to do this by a majority of the councillors, and it seems to me that at a full council meeting of all 42, it seems to me that they are due the courtesy of getting the report about what they asked for. Okay, it'll show that the Conservative, Labour and independent groups were all wrong, because they all said that it was a system nobody liked, and actually people do. So personally, I think the recommendation should be that this is reported back to full council, because this is where it came from.
I'll second that.
Jason. Excellent. So I just think as a matter of courtesy, we should send it back. So I'm sure that Corsley.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve Pitt was more polite than Kimberly Barrett. Less polite than Kimberly. I'll be less polite than Councillor Pitt.
Well, I hope I'm not going to have to throw you out.
I hope you do throw me out, because I want to get home. The trouble, we've got these headbangers in the council who don't listen to anything, not to common sense, not to nothing. And then when they've made a cock up, they don't show up to explain why they did it in the first place. So I hope we do take it back to the council. The public support it. The Conservatives in all around Hampshire support it. Everybody supports it, apart from the Tories here in Portsmouth, which is no different. They're all completely, well, there we go.
So, and my understanding was that the police commissioner was asking for us to get rid of the booking system as well, on the basis that it produced lots of fly tipping, but then our fly tipping numbers were down. So again, so colleagues, my suggestion is that we accept the report, but that we do send this back to full council, because this is where the request initially came from.
At the present time, the report is just for noting, so it may be that you need to consider a little bit more carefully before it's sent back. I understand, but at the moment, I understand it was only being asked to be sent back to Cabinet.
Okay, so I'm going to change the recommendation to say that we forward this to full council for their consideration at the meeting on the 14th of March. So we add it to the agenda. Colleagues, are you happy with that? Yes. Thank you. Okay. All right, next one, tree planting. Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Leader. This paper I've brought to you on behalf of Councillor Barrett, the Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Environment, and it recognises some of the work which we're doing at the moment to help green the city, following the greening strategy which was published back in 2020, and in particular branch one of that, which is, I'll read it to you, to double canopy coverage in the city. We need to add 360 new trees in parks and open spaces and 120 new street trees every year for the next 25 years, and it's part of that that I'm bringing this to you today. So the work which COLAS do in maintaining the streets around the city includes dealing with the trees, and that also includes trees in the pavements, on grass verges, etc. Historically, there have been trees which have been taken out of particular locations, tree pits, and COLAS have gone around in recent months and identified where those tree pits are, where there's actually no trees anymore. There is attached to this paper an appendix which details every location where they've identified where there were trees removed from tree pits, and there's a total of about 354 of those. That's included in the report with a breakdown of what was an empty tree pit, a tree where there was one in a grass verge, perhaps there's a filled pit now, and even a stump sticking out. So we've identified all those locations. COLAS are going back, reviewing each of those locations and establishing where they can replant trees. Now, we can't replant trees in every location, and there will be good reasons for that, but where we can, and where COLAS can, we will do that. So there is further investigation work going on at the moment, and that will be brought back to councillors as soon as that work is complete, but then we'll be looking to actually replant trees in those tree pits and help support the strategy for greening the city.
Thanks very much indeed. Kimberly?
Thank you very much, Martin. It's a really good bit of work, so thanks to you, your team and COLAS as well. I wanted this to be brought to Cabinet today because it's not just a project I've worked on, it's been a real collaborative project between myself, Councillor Horton and Councillor Stagg. We recognised that there were all these empty tree pits across the city, and with us as a city only having something like 9.8% tree cover in the city, and it's an objective of ours to double that and sort of head up the list so that we're much more of a greener city and also much more of a healthier city and somewhere nice to walk and live and work in as well. So this piece of work has been one that's been ongoing but vitally important, I think, to our greening strategy across the city, but also our healthy strategy as well. So as Martin's mentioned, we've identified a number of sites across the city. Hopefully we can replant as many things into tree pits, whether it's trees or perhaps wildflowers as well, and just see how it goes there. But it's a really important piece of work that's been done. Some of the tree pits, as Martin's mentioned, we might not be able to, trees have been removed for a reason there, so that's why we have to do the more investigative work to see what's underneath, if that's why trees have been removed. So there is still ongoing work there, so it's great to have, put a pin in this at the moment to show where we are and where we're heading towards. And I find it quite exciting that we, and this is something that goes across the whole city as well, so it won't be in certain areas, this is something that goes across the whole of Portsmouth. So I really look forward to seeing what comes from this, how we can increase our tree cover tree canopy cover across the city, and enhance our biodiversity and the air quality as well, and just have a much nicer, happier place to work and live in the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lindstag.
Thank you. I'm thinking back to about 12, possibly 14 years ago, when I battled individuals who wanted to have the tree pits taken out to increase parking spaces. And I'm not saying who I was battling with, but I'm so glad that I was right and that person was wrong, and that we still have those tree pits that we can now plant up where possible. One of the things I learned actually from a television documentary is how much trees and even bushes catch particulates, and particularly on the main roads or any busy road. That is important, because we talk about nitrogen dioxide and carbon dioxide, but we don't talk much about particulates, and those are major problems for people like Matt, who's an asthmatic. And so by having these wherever possible, I know not all the tree pits can be used for planting trees or even bushes, but I think where we can do it, I think it's really good from a public health point of view, from people's point of view. But also, there are some residents who asked me, this is at an environmental thing we were doing at Baffin's Pond one day, and some residents of Southsea who live in Ashbury Place asked, and this is not in the report, and I think it's just been accidentally left out. They asked specifically, could they have their tree pits reinstated with trees, because it would make the place look much nicer, much more pleasant, and much more healthy for people. So I'm really glad that this is happening. And one thing I would like to, and I ask this all the time, and I know there's always an objection to it, can we not get residents or businesses to get involved in the maintenance? Because all the time people are saying, somebody needs to do something about this, but they don't do it. So I say, well, why can't you do it? And sometimes we get objections from the council. It's difficult. But I think if we can get more people to take responsibility for their own environment and the environment around them, then the better for the city. It costs us less, and it's pride in the city, as was pride in improving the air quality, etc. So well done. Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. Good report.
Councillor Lee Hunt, and then Susie.
Yeah, most grateful, Leader. Most grateful too for the report. Leader, since I and Jason here, we've been representing Nelson Ward for quite some time. Jason much longer than I. But if the news wants a picture of the result of this kind of good work, all they have to do is go into the western end of North End Avenue, and there are 6 new, very healthy, flourishing, vital trees. I've been in them now probably about 2 or 3 years. But I can send you a picture, Josh, even without me in it, if you like. But there are some that exist, but they are really good. Now, the secret to this is, as Councillor Barrett touched upon, is the investigation of the tree pit, because there's another one in Basin Street, which, although I pushed on it, officers say it can't be resurrected for a variety of reasons. And I remember when I was in Southsea along Campbell Road, we were trying to get these trees put in, and the new trees kept dying. And when they looked into it and they investigated it, there was a gas pipe underneath, and the gas pipe was fractured. So the gas was leaking into the tree pits and was poisoning the roots and the trees, so they wouldn't survive. So what we did, we got the gas pipe fixed, and the trees are now doing very well. But what I really, really welcome is that it's a strategic approach now to getting these trees replanted and the tarmac taken up, rather than me sitting on the phone ringing various trees officers up saying, well, you said you're going to come and do this one and you haven't done it. So I welcome the strategic approach. I noticed the ones in Emsworth Road, Drayton Road, and North End Avenue again. There are still a couple that need to be done. So having a strategic approach is the most important thing that comes out of this today, notwithstanding the caveats that Councillor Barrett has rightfully described and that officers will know about. So I'm really, really pleased. It will brighten the streets up for residents, and residents will be pleased as well.
Thank you very much. Susie?
Part of the reason I've got a build out outside my house still, which stops me parking, is because when they came to take it out, my neighbour put all her children on it so that it couldn't be removed. But anyway, that's not why I wanted to speak. Just on the strategy bit, I think it's really, thank you, Martin, for this report. It is very welcome. But I just want to say that actually it's part of a wider strategy within Councillor Barrett's portfolio around greening generally. So we have these different strategies, different lines of work. But actually, I think for the first time in a long time, there's an overarching view about what's being planted where. And most importantly is who is responsible for it. Because I think whilst I admire Councillor Stagg's optimism that the general public are going to take these beds and trees and look after them, it's not always the case, and we need to make sure that when that doesn't work out, that we have a strategy for keeping up with them. The only practical thing that I was going to say was, under what happens next, 3.14, it says the investigatory work is ongoing, that's fair enough. Paper with proposals to be brought back after May 2023. After May 2023 is a long time, so it would be useful to know when that might happen, and to have a window of that. Otherwise, this could be something that we just talk about and goes on forever. And then in a year's time, we're back saying why are these tree pits not planted. So that would be useful. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. So I'm very keen on this report. I've had so many complaints from residents that Colas have left a stump of a tree in a build out on a road for 10, 15 years, and it looks terrible, it decays, and in places where there's pressure on parking, that's a real problem for people, because you're saying to people, it's okay, we're not giving you a real tree, something nice, we're giving you a dead stump of a tree and stopping you parking. So I'm pleased that Colas have moved and that we can now get trees replaced so that we don't have those stumps abandoned for years and years on Terrace Street. So that's good. Martin, the 3 tree pits that I keep asking for keep not appearing in this report. So there are many, many more across the city which you have not yet found. So please could you add the 3 in Ashby Place? This is my call every time we look at this, and Colas continuing to ignore them. So if they could please not ignore those, I'd be very grateful. They're either in a car park, which is owned by Portsmouth City Council and looked after by Colas, or they're on a road which is owned by Portsmouth City Council and looked after by Colas. We've got to make sure that there's some joined up thinking in Colas to be able to get some of these things addressed. But we have been treating residents badly by just leaving those pictures of all those stumps of trees in this report is really worrying, because we know what the problem is with parking in the city, and and Colas have said we're going to leave you with a rotting stump and not allow you to park because a rotting stump is better. I'm really pleased that Colas are doing better than this now, and that we're after pressure from Kimberley and the council, things will move forward. So that's very good. Lee, I'm not coming back to you. I'm sorry, we're out of time. No, thank you. Okay, colleagues, are you happy with this report? Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to, where are we? Sorry, turn paper over. Capital strategy. Christopher, the fun stuff.
Thank you, Leader. Well, continuing with the theme of strategy, you have before you your capital strategy that's updated annually. It's for you to endorse and it's for council to approve. It sets out your proposed capital investment needs and aspirations over the period of the next 10 years. It's an investment of circa £1.45 billion, and it also sets out how that might be funded. It covers a number of things. It covers, obviously this is to then inform the capital budgeting process itself, so you have a strategy that then informs the capital budget itself. It describes the process of how you seek to determine what your capital investment priorities are, and then how you evaluate those, and then, as I've said, how that strategy might be funded. Obviously, a large element of funding a capital investment strategy of this scale can be from borrowing, not necessarily entirely. And as a consequence of that, the strategy also sets out what the Council's overall policy in relation to borrowing and the repayment of borrowing is. That's commonly described as MRP, but that actually means minimum revenue provision, and that has to be made on a prudent basis. The capital strategy also talks about capital investment in what are called commercial investments, as opposed to service investments. And as a consequence of that, the capital strategy also addresses elements of how you ensure or provide assurance that your capital investments for commercial purposes are affordable and can be provided for. I don't think I've got anything else to say apart from that. I can see you looking at me, Leader, and you're probably keenly looking at the clock, so I'll halt there and see if there are any questions.
Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Chris. It's something that I talk about a lot, and that is planning and being aware of what the future looks like and not acting on an annual basis. As someone who followed council budgets every year long before I was actually a councillor, I used to find it very odd that a load of stuff would appear in a capital budget one year and then disappear off the face of the earth, never to be seen ever again in terms of proposals, and that officers would be obsessed with something and then apparently not interested in it at all. And I just always found that particularly odd. This clears a lot of that out of the way and means that there is a long-term plan. It identifies some of those key things, especially around education investment, social care, etc., where it's important to have a long-term view. And that means that in terms of the council's planning, whilst there will always be unexpected items or things that are pressing that need to be addressed, that there is at the very least an overview of where those big ticket items are likely to come from, so that administrations of whatever flavour are able to plan properly ahead. So this enables us to do that, particularly Appendix 1 is very valuable in that regard, and it is important for all officers of the council to note that that's not something that should just be looked at once a year when it's reviewed, but that they should have input into it on a regular basis and be constantly referring to it to make sure that the administration, either this one or any future one, are properly informed about those financial capital pressures coming down the road so they can plan strategically and accordingly.
Okay, I'm going to give 10 seconds to Darren and 10 seconds to Lee. 10 seconds starting from now.
Councils have gone bust because they've got this sort of paper wrong. I'm delighted that our prudential approach means that we probably won't get a bust because we've got the right things in place, and it's absolutely essential we do in the future so we can improve people's lives. 9.5.
12. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I just want to say we could do so much more with our capital, what the capital monies we do. Now, this is a strategy, I get that, Leader, but you've only got to look at why this government, this Conservative government, interferes with what we do here. And I will quote the so-called border crossing point. That's a waste of money, £23 million or thereabouts wasted. That could have been sent on services and doing capital projects for the people of the city. We could have done more in Drayton Farlington. We could have done more in Nelson Ward, done more in Southsea. £23 million down the tube. And it's worse than that. We've got to spend another £4 million ripping it all out. Another £4 million in our capital budget, ripping it all out to undo what this stupid government has done. It's incompetent, silly government.
Thank you very much.
Spoiling things for people in this city.
Thank you. Colleagues, are you happy with this report? Thank you. Treasury Management, Chris. Thank you. Are you finished?
Thank you, Leader. Another strategy for you to consider, and again, one for you to endorse and pass on to full council for the March council meeting. So in contrast to the capital strategy, which I've just outlined, which is concerned with capital investment and long-term capital spending and long-term borrowing, the Treasury Management strategy is about how the council manages its temporary surplus cash flows. So this is the money in and out of the bank account. So what you have before you is the usual annual strategy, which seeks to set out on a risk basis how to deal with those surplus cash flows. The priority for any council, actually, and it's set out in legislation as well, is that the first priority is security of your funds. So any funds that you have for a temporary nature, you place them in secure investments and with secure counterparties. Second priority is liquidity, which means that they have to be available as and when required. So you bring them back in order to be able to pay your sums as required. And the third priority is yield. So you get the best return that you can once you've satisfied those previous two criteria. So the policy itself sets out the criteria and the limits on investments, and to provide the council with assurance that we have secure, well-diversified and risk management approach to all of the council's funding that it has. The key policy changes this time round are that we are likely not to be in a borrowing, we're likely not to seek to borrow over the short term because interest rates are currently quite high, but are expected to fall. That means that the council will use its surplus cash flows to avoid borrowing in that circumstance, in order to avoid those high interest rate charges, and as and when interest rates fall, the council will then seek to borrow as it's in what's called an under-borrowed position, which means that we've got an underlying need to borrow to fund our overall capital programme, but we don't yet need to draw on borrowing because we've got surplus cash in the meantime. We've also strengthened the environmental, social and governance aspects of the policy so that we are able to ensure that the council is not investing in state-controlled organisations that have, for example, as we've spoken before at this meeting, they've got questionable human rights records.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief. Chris, I think it's really important that we explain for anyone listening that when we say surplus cash, what we're not talking about is spare cash. This is money that has been allocated. Maybe it's from external sources to the council, or maybe it's from within our existing resources, but it is money that is allocated to things. It's just not yet been spent. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. So sometimes we'll be holding money because we've set it aside, for example, for capital investment. The capital investment has not yet taken place, and then we will use that funding as and when the capital investment takes place. Other examples are, for example, it may just be that the amount of council tax collection that we have in a particular month might be in excess of the bills that we have to pay out in that month, which generates a short-term surplus until a later date when it is spent. So it's exactly that. It's managing those day-to-day cash flows in and out of the council's bank account.
Okay, colleagues, you happy to send this on to full council? Thank you very much indeed. Item 11, council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties. Chris, I understand we need to get this done within this financial year, not to benefit next financial year, but the year after.
Not quite, Leader.
I'm sorry.
It might benefit the year after, from April 24. You're right.
Yes,
I'm already
about
year.
finances, Chris.
Correct, but it's a decision. It's also a decision required by council, and the council has to give its intent or notify its intent to charge on these two aspects 12 months in advance.
So, colleagues, I think it's sensible to send this on to full council. There is the potential to get up to just over £2 million extra into the revenue budget, not for the next year where we've done the budget, but the year after. And looking at the financial situation, we'd be fools not to do this. Also looking at the numbers here, we're talking 1,600 houses in the city that either are empty or that are second homes. And I'm conscious that we have over 2,000 families on the waiting list for a home, actually places should be being used. If we've got families who need somewhere to live, they should be being used for people, for families who need them. So colleagues, are you happy to send this on to full council? Thank you. Item 12 was forward plan omission about Debenhams. I'm sure we were happy with that.
There was item 10, which was the civic officers regeneration.
Oh, sorry, have I missed? Beg your pardon. It was loitering at the end. Sorry. I'm going to pass over to Susie now to do item 10, and Colette and Dave might feel hard done by that we didn't have a discussion about anaerobic digesters, and that you might want one, but do it without me here. I shall leave this to Susie.
Okay, we'll give you an opportunity to come back in if you want to, but we'll go to item 10, which is the civic officers regeneration. Natasha.
Thank you. So this is an item that is about the civic officers. This is the cross-party member working group that was formed following a full council resolution last year. This provides an update on the work of that group. What has become clear from engagement with across the parties is the work needs to be split into two work streams. So although there was a resolution to come back to Cabinet with some options, that hasn't been possible because of the need to split the work. The first work stream is around identifying what the requirement is for the way that we deliver services from an office space that we do currently in the civic office, and how that works for community requirements and the staff who deliver those services. The second work stream has become apparent that members have a further ask of not just the building but the civic realm around the Guildhall Square. So the work has been split into two separate work streams that we've engaged some specialist advisors to support us on. The first work stream will be looking at the civic requirement from an office space point of view. It's got a 16-week timeline, so we're anticipating that programme will result in a report and a presentation back to members in the summer, and that will include things like costed proposals for alternative working solutions for the civic office, for its functions, the running costs, alternative income generating opportunities for the civic space. And the second work stream will look more broadly at the existing building, so how the existing building could be reused, could it be demolished, what the accessibility requirements, how the building could better showcase heritage assets and that civic space around the Guildhall Square. That is a slightly longer piece of work, but the next steps are to put the governance in place. We've got a project team now dedicated to this and some funding to progress the work. We have a new chair for the member working group in Councillor Pitt, so he will be taking the member working group forward with the governance that will be signed off in the March meeting of the group later this month, and then we'll progress the work according to the timeline that gets agreed and the governance in place for that. So by summer we'll be looking at some architectural designs and feasibility business case for the civic offices, as in the office space requirement, and then following that we'll be looking at a decision to proceed to detailed study, potentially looking for formal decisions to proceed at the beginning of 2024. So that is, depending on what options are determined, could include anything from planning to commercial negotiation on different sites, etc. So there's an awful lot of more work that needs to be completed, but it is going forward with some formal governance around it and a proper project management structure in place. But it will continue to be the work of the cross-party member working group.
Thank you, Natasha, for that update. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Yes, thank you very much, Natasha. As Natasha said, I've recently taken over chairing this group. It's been positive discussion so far. I do hope that members of the other parties are going to continue to engage with it. There's been a lot of agreement so far, which is great. There are three things that we need to stress here, in my view. One, that the purpose of this exercise is to make sure that as a council, we are delivering value for money to local residents in how we deliver their services. And there's no more important central focus for that than there is around the civic offices. A hugely inefficient building, costing a vast amount of money to the public purse to operate, and like all organisations, businesses, charities, doesn't matter what they are, that there is a need to review how we deliver those services or where we deliver them from in future post-COVID, as working practices seem to be evolving into something of a new normal. So it's absolutely vital that we are not wasting public money on sustaining that building, and that the focus of how we deliver those services in future is to show that we can do that with an investment it will return a net saving to the public purse. So that has to be the overriding consideration. It's also important that we use this opportunity that we're presented here to leverage that regeneration around the city centre that we all want to see. City Centre North is a really important part of that, but this opportunity at the southern end potentially gives us a huge once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I don't use that lightly, I do mean once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to look again at the decisions that were made following the Second World War and into the early 70s when the current plaza was created, to say what does that need to look like in order to properly serve as the hub community civic space into the 21st century. So if we can get that right, in both City Centre North and in the City Centre South location, those two things will leverage major change on Commercial Road. They will get developers to look at how they invest there differently. They will get independent shops wanting to open there and serve those communities. They will drive leisure uses and hospitality, and we will have an evolved high street for the 21st century. As I said earlier on in today's meeting, we're not a landowner on that high street, but we can influence it from both ends, and in doing so, with some public realm improvements along the way, create a coherent cultural spine that leads from the current Guildhall Square through to the City Centre North development and enables active and safe travel through those spaces and an evening and late night economy that actually makes sense for this city. It's a massively exciting opportunity and one that we must grasp. I'm desperate that we get on with it quickly. I certainly don't want to be sat here in four or 5 years' time talking about the art of the possible. I want to be sat here in 4 or 5 years' time updating the council on how that project is now being delivered. So that's where we need to get to, and I think we can get there. The third opportunity around all of this is to say that we can save the environmental impact of that building, and that's not to be taken lightly. It's having a hugely detrimental effect on the local environment, and we need to be addressing that. That alone in itself provides us with both money-saving opportunities, but also an opportunity to do better for the communities that live around the city centre. So with that focus around regeneration, that focus around investing better in the public purse, and that focus around the environment, this is an exciting opportunity which we're grasping with both hands, and I hope we can continue to take members of all parties with us on that journey.
Thank you, Councillor Pett. Any other comments?
Sorry, I just wanted to add, you might want to take this paper forward to full council for debate, given that it's a cross-party item.
That's another one for full council. We've got a growing list. So, do we have everyone's agreement that we will take that forward to full council? Yes. Okay. And thank you for the report. Thank you. So, the next item I think we haven't done is the forward plan emission notice around enabling redevelopment of Debenham as Palmerston Road CPO. I don't think we did the forward plan bit, Darren and Councillor Sanders. I think we did the exclusion of the press and public and the enabling development compulsory purchase order, but I'm not too sure we did the forward plan bit. I presume we just have to note that. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And then, does that bring us to the end? I'm going to come back to that. Okay. So, item 5 Would you like to have your opportunity to talk about the anaerobic digestion?
I would, and apologies, it was my misunderstanding, so I apologise. So the purpose of this report is to update the Cabinet on the progress of the project to develop an anaerobic digestion facility. This is a commercially sensitive project, and the sites that have been considered are therefore not named within the report. We have set up a cross-directorate board in early 2020, bringing together the waste management leads, planning and the commercial property team who are supporting the site selection. We have so far looked at considered three sites and undertaken investigations at 3 different sites. And the current site that we're mainly focused on we've put in a confidential pre-planning application with Hampshire County Council, as they're the planning authority for waste infrastructure. And we've also carried out the relevant tests to check that we have got all the right gas connections for the site. At the moment, we are undertaking all the ecology surveys over the summer. These began in the autumn, so we're well underway with those. We've also undertaken some heritage surveys as well at the Site 3, I shall call it. The report includes an indicative timeline of when we would be ready to submit a formal planning application, which is likely to be, if all goes well, in the autumn of 2023. And again, this report, I think, needs to go forward to full council.
Many thanks for that. Anyone want to comment or question? Councillor Hunt.
No, I'll let Kimberly Barrett go first of all, because it's her area.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horton. Thank you very much to Colette, James, Dave and the team for bringing this forward. As I alluded to earlier on, there are a number of projects going on in the waste team at the moment, and this probably being one of the biggest ones apart from the food waste rollout across the city, which we're very proud of. So thank you very much for pushing forward with this, and now we're at the point, as Colette has said, that especially which you can see in 3.3 of the report, that we can now give this indication of a timeline how we can go forward. So like Colette has said as well, we've gone through some of these surveys. We've got to the point that we can give an idea to other members, to members of the public, hopefully where we should be. As the report says, we will try and condense it if possible, and pull it forward wherever possible. But there are a lot of legal things that we have to do, a lot of reports that we have to do. But I am really pleased with how this is pushing forward, because I know it's something that everyone's been talking about for some time. I know our colleagues in Hampshire, across Hampshire from the various councils are quite interested in this as well, because at the moment, and correct me if I'm wrong, Colette, I think we have to go to Dorset at the moment. So, we've got a real plan for this council alone that we want to, look at our carbon, our environment, and so that we don't have to take our food waste all the way down to Dorset. We have something much closer, so our carbon footprint obviously reduces, and it would be a good income for the city as well in a time where the government continues to cut our budget year on year and we're struggling to find the money to keep the services we need. To have this obviously doing something great for the environment, for our residents, and bringing in the income in the future, it ticks every single box for me. So thank you very much for bringing the report forward, and I'm excited to see how this continues, and we'll push forward with it.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Hunt.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Barrett, and thank you to the officers for everything they're doing. It really is exciting. And if Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson were here, he would say only in Hampshire does Liberal Democrat run Eastleigh and Liberal Democrat run Portsmouth collect food waste. And I wonder if it's about time we stop calling it the waste services and changing it more to a positive resource services, because this is all about using waste resources as a resource, and this is such a progressive council. Again, it's that wood for the trees thing, isn't it? There's so much going on. This council leads the way over solar panels, ship to shore power, planting enormous numbers of trees, is reducing pollution, is doing so much work around climate change. It's a tremendous amount of work thanks to the administration, and let's put it down, it's down to the administration and the officers that support us in that work. And now to see, putting money where our mouth is, we're coming up with an anaerobic digester for all the business reasons that Councillor Barrett promotes too. People really do like it. It's being rolled out citywide now. Everyone can know that 40% of the waste that goes into bins is so-called food waste. There are other people say we should be using food waste differently, but that's where it ends up. So we're pragmatic about that. We're also progressive. And we're doing these tremendous things, even in the face of the government slashing our budget by £100 million. We still continue to do all these astonishing and progressive things for the betterment of Portsmouth and her citizens. So it is absolutely remarkable, and we are lucky to have some very important officers who help us to achieve these things, and that should not go unnoticed. There's lots more I could rabbit on about, but this is a really good step at Portsmouth. Thank you for letting me go on.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt, for wrapping up so nicely the interconnection of all of these things that we're focusing on. And I think that's the point that you were making, and it's a really good point to make, because they are all connected. I think you said if Councillor Vernon Jackson was still here, he'd probably say, why wasn't it done yesterday? But I think what this report demonstrates is, first of all, his impatience for the ambition of it. Let's be honest, that's what's behind that. But secondly, what this report shows is how complex these things are. And obviously, a lot of people have said thank you, but thank you to the officers for pushing this forward. And it is a very exciting thing that's going to happen. Councillor Pitt.
We've forgotten my name then for a minute. It's been an interesting journey, this one, because I think Colette will remember herself and Councillor Ashmore and I sat around in the Cabinet meeting room about 3.5 years ago saying, how do we sort this out so we can actually do something with this waste? Are we looking at mobile units and who might be able to do a licence for them? And it was all hugely complex, and it was actually going to end up costing us money to do those things. But the overwhelming focus at that point was, how do we stop taking it all to Dorset, and how can we make sure we're processing this food waste locally, because we're so committed to it. And it's important to remember that during this journey we've gone from trialling food waste in an area to rolling it out across the whole city, all of which helps to increase and define that business case around this investment. That's the important thing. So yes, it has taken quite a while to get to this point, and we've still got a bit of a journey to go, but we are getting there, and this is really groundbreaking. We'll be the first local authority in Hampshire to bring forward our own anaerobic digester, something else to be celebrated, and the work done to date has been thorough and methodical, and that's really important because this is a very significant project. We need to get it right. I'm convinced we will get it right, and I'm convinced it's going to be transformative for the city.
Good to hear, isn't it? Thank you. I'm assuming from all those comments that well, it's a report for noting, but our thanks to all the officers for that. And I believe, because we've jumped around this agenda and chairs, that brings us to the end of this meeting. So thank you very much to all the officers who've prepared reports for this. Thank you to Cabinet for all your comments, and that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.